Alright, you're on.
Alright. I did mine on Armored Core 4 Answer, which is a sequel to Armored Core 4. But I prefer this one much more, and I'll explain why throughout. It is developed by From Software and published by Ubisoft. And some of you know From Software has done other things such as Darker Souls, and in which, that's one horrible lag. From Software, I believe, has really good CG openings, which I would like to show you, but just click it. Okay. Should be. It's just okay.
So is that a walking aircraft carrier?
Basically, with giant cannons on it. And ones on the sides.
From loud to quiet to loud.
Yeah.
Well, it's a mech game, Bob. That's surprising. Doppler.
That thing looks huge.
Is this what the game looks like?
From Software, like in Darker Souls, the opening sequence, even the older like PS2 games, their CG openings are always incredible.
Maybe Xbox 2 will have that.
I will not call it that. I think that Xbox One and PS4 games are going to be looking like this in about 18 months.
The Division looks like it has this level of detail.
Yeah. Oh.
Gundam.
And the pilot just blacked out from that burst.
Oh, playing through the game, the quick burst sessions, in real life, a person would easily pass out.
We just need to keep going.
Oh.
That's awesome. You know, they could have saved some of the money that they spent building that walking aircraft carrier on more accurate weapons.
I was thinking that too. They weren't very.
Walking aircraft carrier.
You gotta be mobile, even if they're really.
Oh, he just got shot.
But he didn't cut a helicopter in half.
I guess he shouldn't have gotten to the top.
Landed it.
Nailed it.
He loses points for dragging his feet.
Oh.
But it's such a graceful slide.
Yeah, I mean, come on. You gotta give him a break.
Oh, look at that.
It's a hard world for a hard employee. Why is it called For Answer?
Well, there's a boss in the game called Answer. They don't really explain exactly why it's called For Answer, but I'm assuming for an answer better than that humanity has been placed in.
Or maybe the whole game is just a birthday present for that boss.
Maybe. Even though the boss is like only talked about in that mission, which is kind of. I don't like it. All right. So this game takes place 10 years after the Armored Core 4, which in it it's called the National Dismantlement Wars when they refer to it. And the more important mechs that are needed to know is Adstarva, which is the rank 1 in the Klar division. Windy, which ends up she helps you. Thermidor, which is the villain of sorts. It depends on how you look at him. Unknown, which I like what they did with White Glint, is he is you from the 4th game, or from the prequel to this game. So it's like you're better than your old self, kind of, if you're on the player perspective, which I really enjoy that thought. Old King, which is, if you go with him, he's more of the villain, which I'll explain that too. And then these last 2 people are powerful people who end up fighting. And you have the girl that helps you throughout the game, Serene Hayes, who also gives you your starting next. And she's secretly, they don't explain this in the game, but there's subtle hints, small hints throughout the game that hint to she being Kasumi Sika, which she in the 4th game was one of the other next you fight against, but really didn't play much of an important role.
What is next?
Yeah.
I should have put that.
Oh.
There we go. I should have put that in first. But next is the armored cores, which are the big mechs that the players use. Links is terms for the pilots of the next. The operator is essentially the person that gets you the missions and explains your briefings throughout. There's MTs, which are the smaller, less powerful mechs, which usually just have one simple gun on it. The normals are a lot like the next, but they're really slow and have virtually no attack power in comparisons to the 2. Arms forts are the giant things, like in the opening cutscene. That was the arms fort from the BFF company, Spirit of Motherwill. And one of the big twists in this game is a thing called Kojima, which is essentially a form of energy source that also has a major radiation side effect, which is causing the Earth to essentially be extremely polluted. Like deserts are taking over all of fertile land, and global warming with sea levels rising. I don't know. Apparently the scrolling wheel changes it. No, stop. And the big twist, one of the big new things in the different nation that differentiate this 4A from 4 is your mech has a shielding called assault armor, or a shielding called personal armor, and you can blow it up. Essentially, it's like your major final move attack, where you sacrifice your shielding for essentially a mini nuclear explosion, which would usually destroy anything within a certain radius of you, which is really cool and fun to do.
Mm-hmm. Can you mess that up though? Like if you
Oh
do
yeah,
it too
if
early?
you do it too early, and if like another next is in the proximity of you and is shooting at you, your shielding is down, so you take a very extra amount of damage. So basically, you risk your shield to do an explosion, and then there's a chance you could take extra damage. It does regenerate over time, but if you do the assault armor destruction, it takes longer to regenerate that way.
How much damage might that attack do, percentage-wise, of a person's health?
For a week next, I usually come around 35,000 total health, and without armor, it's very easy. You could take 10,000 in a hit, maybe more like 5,000 on normal weaponry. So it's possible if you're not careful, if there's a barrage of missiles coming in, and you do your assault armor, you could die right there. So it's very risky. I usually only do it to finish off other next, or if it's the end of the game, end of the level. All right, like the setting is you are on Earth, but it's been so polluted with the Kojima technology that's being used as the main form of energy source that the standard civilian populace lives in these things called cradles, 7 kilometers above sea level, where the air is cleaner, and there's supposedly about 20 million people in one of these massive cradles, which the next, when they stand on them, they're like that big, so they're huge. When you start off, there is the corporations, which you work for Glard, which is a mercenary group, which they independently hire the different Nex and mercenaries to fight for them essentially, which there are three main big ones, which is GA, Global Armaments, Interior Union, and Omer Science and Technology. And then they have their subdivisions in between. Like, essentially, each one kind of has a special thing about it. Like, Global Armaments is usually, they are more centered around bigger next that have more attack damage, and then, like, Interior Union is bigger, but also use more energy-based things. Like, GA uses more standard gun weaponry. And Omer and Technology is usually lighter based and energy. So it's kind of like they all kind of have a different part of each other, but like light energy, and then heavy standard weaponry.
So they use their corporations to divide between them.
Yeah, and also they all make the different weapons you can use. Like GA usually makes more grenade based or rifle based weaponry. And then Interior Union has more energy-based weaponry. All right. One of the main forms of bosses, besides other next, are things called arms forts, in which there's the smaller classes, which there's Stratego, which is essentially a boat with a large blade equipped to the front. So if you were in front of it as it comes by, it basically will insta-kill you and cut you in half. There's land crabs, which are really big, they don't move really. They're just more big forts that have big cannons on the top. And there's one mission where they change the things out for these things that are called Sol Dios cannons, which are orbiting laser ball cannons that you have to destroy those first before destroying that. There's Eclipse, which is essentially a big plane, and then Jet Type, you'd think that'd be the plane, but no, Jet Type is a land base that uses swords, and Gigabase is a lot like the land crab, but is amphibious in nature. And then I got the super classes, but I'll go to the pictures for those ones. The one in the cutscene was the Spirit of Motherwill, which is BFF, and it is essentially you have to go in dodging the cannons, and then you have to fight it by taking down its missiles and cannons.
You have to actually fight that thing?
Yeah, I actually have I couldn't bring in the Xbox because Colt's external is internal, and he's got the newer 360, so I can bring it in. So I got a video or two of gameplay, and one of them is fighting that. So I'll just bring that up near the end. The Answer, which is developed by I can't remember this one. Omer. It is it floats in the air. It is almost as big as the Spirit of Motherwill. If you're too far away from it, there's an energy shield, but if you get too close, it explodes its energy shield, like the assault armor I was explaining earlier, but it doesn't get the debuff from the explosions, so you have to keep in between the radius while shooting it. There's Cabricon, developed by Algebra, which its special thing is it drops these down and shoots a bunch of drones out to fight you, which are really easy to kill, so that one's really not that hard. And the GA's Great Wall, which essentially it's a really big train that you have to go in through the back and destroy the generator. So I would say if they ever fought, I would say the Answer would win just because of its shield and range. I'd say it'd be between these two, basically.
The top two?
Yeah, I'd say they'd be the strongest ones. But that one's got the shield, so I think it would win. But that's different. Through the game, you start off as fighting for Collard, which I explained earlier, which is a mercenary group that works for the corporations for their own game. Throughout the game, around halfway, there's a corporation called Orca that appears, which is a rebellion group against Collard and wants to essentially change the way humanity is by, instead of floating in the cradles, allow humanity to start to progress into space. And they are led by a man called Maximilian Thermidor. And then there's the Independent Corporation, which is just a corporation that's not part of the Collard group, but they have their own, which next, which is White Clint, which is you from the first game, who you either have to team up with or fight. So as I was saying, like essentially the main story is you start off as a Lynx who gets brought into the thing by Serene Hayes, who you are walking down you are a mercenary, and you get to choose essentially your own missions, and it allows you to go through different stories. You have options of which story or which missions to do for different stories. In the end, there's really only 3 endings, which I will quickly go over those after this. After you defeat Spirit of Motherwell Cabricon is when the other corporations really start paying attention to you. Because essentially you destroyed their enemy's largest military asset. And then the mission where you either have to team up or fight White Clint is when the other side, the secondary, you have the option to do the secondary story. But the primary story is after you fight White Clint, or if you team up with Outstarva, which is the rank 1 Collard guy, and you fight and beat White Clint. Then you, Outstarva essentially gets destroyed by White Clint. But that's when, after that mission, Orca appears, coming up with, they want to essentially do this thing called the Closed Plan, which is their rebellion against Collard and the organizations. Eventually, near the end, the Collard higher ranks get blackmailed by Orca, which I'll explain the whole reason of that in the other one, because they don't tell you why in the Collard story, because you have to actually fight for Orca to know why. But one Lynx called Windy Fanchon essentially breaks away from the group, hires you, if you agree, and then you go to I don't have it in here, Arturia. You go to the Orca base, and it's defeat Maximilian Thermidor, which allows mankind to stay in the cradles above the Earth, living peacefully in the atmosphere. And spoiler, at the end of that mission, Windy says, she basically says Thermidor is Outstarva, so he faked his death to form the organization. Alright, the Orca story is essentially, after the mission, he hires you to do the Closed Plan, which the Closed Plan is he wants to bring the cradles down to Earth to allow him to use the satellite cannons to destroy landmine, or the satellite minefields called the salt cells. Your first mission is to protect these anti-satellite cannons to destroy the minefields. Afterwards, you are the only remaining survivor of Orca, and have to protect the cranium, which is what you had to defeat if you pick the other story. Once you succeed, the cradles come down to Earth, which unfortunately majority of the people, large amounts of the people die to the Kojima exposure, but it allows humanity the chance to go into space. And now the third ending, which is you have to beat the game twice, did a lot. After the first mission of Orca, a man called the Old King talks to you, saying he wants a rebellion can't be made without some bloodshed. He wants you to join him to destroy Cradle 03, in resulting you kill 100 million people, and you get a fake mission, which all the remaining people, Lynx, team up against you. Team up against you. Even your operator, who once worked with you, even fights against you because she realizes that if you take this mission, she realizes that you are a complete monster and has to be eliminated. Which, if you do win, you go about destroying the remaining cradles, becoming the greatest monster and mass murderer of all history. Alright, so there's kind of this quick summary of the stories. Now, the playstyle is very dependent on the user. There's multiple things you can do. There's different weaponry you can pick. Rifles for longer range, or snipers for longer range. Machine guns, shotguns are really good against lower based opponents, in which they take down their shields really fast. Rockets, grenades are good against taking down heavier units, which they do more damage overall. And then there's energy-based weaponry, which costs energy to use, but they generally do more damage, and they don't cost as much in the end results. You have to pay for your own ammunition since you're a mercenary. And then there's also swords, which are really powerful but extremely hard to hit since you're moving at like really fast speeds and they only go out so far. And you, like I was saying earlier, you got your assault armor, which is a mini nuclear explosion of your own shield, which does massive amounts of damage, but you risk losing your shield.
Are there like kits, or do you get access to all the weapons?
You start off with essentially 3 kits. You get the mercenary one from Serene, she gives you, or you can pick a company-based one from the 3 main companies. But essentially, it doesn't really matter after a couple missions because you get access to the same amount of parts.
Okay.
So you basically can build any mech of any playstyle. Yeah.
Is this a third-person shooter?
Yes. Well, it's a third-person. Yeah, it's third-person shooter. You're in the third-person perspective. As I think I'm gonna. Yeah, the next slide would show. We'll slide up this one. I'll show. Oh, and then decided to go for something. All right. So as I was saying, there's essentially 3 mech classes. There's the light, which I personally prefer, which is usually either biped or reverse joint. Reverse joint allows you to essentially jump easier. And then you're really fast, high boost, but you have very low defense and usually low attack, depending on, you just can't hold as much weaponry. So you usually have to pick either smaller weapons or less weapons. There's medium, which is usually a good in-between balance. It's usually kind of slow, but not too slow. Good boost, decent defense, and you usually can do pretty much any form of weaponry you choose. But of course, you can't have all the giant guns on you at once with just medium. But heavy usually is quad leg and tanks. Very low speed, not much of a boost, but your defense is extremely high, and you can have almost any form of the weaponry chosen given to you. So you can essentially just sit there and take all damage and give out 10 times as much damage if you can hit them. Right. And then yes, originally this was like all the definitions for the ones I found were bad. I'm sure I could have found better ones, but I like the missile thing going on here. But yeah, you're essentially in third-person perspective. Faster, like if you boost around, you move off to sides of the screen to like show speed differentiation. Well, want to look at this picture doesn't have a lot. You got your radar here, which you're represented in green. Enemies are white. Targets are red. Missiles are pink. And then the big number is your health. The big bar is your shield. The skinny bar is your energy. And you also have, there's supposed to be numbers here that are, the one on the top is your left arm, left shoulder, right arm, right shoulder. And then it shows over here enemy's health. So essentially pretty much everything's at the top here, and then all of this is gameplay screen, which it's kind of cluttered. I mean, in the old games, they would have the energy bar here, and then it was the radar here. It was a little more everywhere.
Do you find that you're able to manage all the
I
information?
personally can, but it does take a few while to get used to, and I haven't played this game for a really long time. I personally do like the style of the older, the older versions more, because it felt more like you were in a HUD cockpit,
Yeah.
while this one is more like, here's your stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, put there.
Do you play a lot of these like kind of mech games?
I've played most of the Armored Core, pretty much every Armored Core. I played a couple Chrome Hounds. Is that what it's called? Chrome
Yeah.
Hounds? Yeah. Played a couple of those, and there was something else I played too. Played a Gundam game. I didn't really like the Gundam game very much. It's too unrealistic. Even though
How would you say that this compares to some of those, or even something like the demos you might have seen for like Titanfall?
One thing I really like about, especially the Armored Core 4 series, which is, in my mind, the second generation of Armored Core, which they're on the third right now, is a lot more fast-paced than the other generations. The first generation of the Armored Core series is essentially you were just walking, and you could do a boost to speed up a little bit. Well, in this one, the essential part of it is you're usually more around aerial combat and boosting around, at least how I play, is you boost around enough to, in realistic, there'd be so many Gs, your head would probably explode. And then the other things I got 2 videos of gameplay examples, and then I got a video gameplay example and a video of the Spirit of Mother Real fight. Were there any questions before I start video? No? I just figured out how this thing works. So. Fast forward. Wait. Do you know how to fast forward in this screen? It doesn't have the bar. Like in the other view, it had a bar.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't see anything. Yeah, there's like a pause button up there, but
Like in the non-projector view, is I had a
You could-
had a bar.
tab over to the video if you wanted to play it directly.
I mean, I'm fine with this, but it's just gonna eat a lot of extra time.
Yeah, I don't know how else to do it. It's locking out the controls, unless you can like right click it or something. I don't know.
No. It's just a duplicate. That did not work. Oh, crap. Sorry. Whenever I tested it, it did the normal. It didn't do that view. So, and I don't know how to operate that view. Yeah, it's going to do this to me.
Do you have the video saved on your computer?
Yeah.
I just played it that way.
Maybe I don't. Hey, I just drove them over. I don't. Oh well. I guess I'll just play it. See, look, I got a bar
now
there.
it's there.
But when I go in the other view, it didn't have. I guess I'll play like this then. When you start the mission, you essentially they couldn't drop you off close, so they gave you the Vanguard Overbooster, which is a very quick boost, straightforward. And while you're coming in, you have to dodge the main cannons on the Spirit of Mother really while shooting at you. To dodge it all. I would have liked somebody to actually try this, but I couldn't. I didn't want to take responsibility for Coltex locks. Once you get in close, its main form of attacking is essentially the missiles. Because once you're in too close, the cannons can't turn fast enough to actually shoot you. And yes, if it steps on you, it does instantly kill you. And yes, it walks.
the level design for this? It's crazy.
Of the actual mech itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause it,
Usually the levels aren't too bad, but the arms force is what seems like they put most of their time into designing. As the mission briefing said, all you really had to do was destroy the missile turrets, and then the thing's just so badly designed, the fire start forming inside of it because of the missile depoys exploding, and essentially it destroys itself just by destroying its missile depots.
Can you jetpack forever? Or
If you have it designed that way, yes. You have to essentially get your energy source, which you get generators, and depending on which parts you pick, absorb a certain amount of energy, and then your boosters have an output ratio according to energy usage. And if it's the right balance, yeah, you can boost forever.
how do you know where your targets are? Are they the purple things on the minimap?
On the minimap, the purple and pink ones are missiles.
Oh,
The white ones are are like essentially things you can fight, but you don't have to. The red ones that appear are the ones you have to destroy.
okay. So these like missile
Yeah,
setups are under the red.
yeah. This guy's not too good.
That's the go to this one.
I could, yeah. I just don't have Xbox. See, look, he doesn't have to fight that guy. I don't know why he's bothering. Yeah. I'm just gonna skip ahead now. You had to destroy the big cannons too.
Why is his screen staticky? Is he taking hits?
I think he was using energy weaponry, which
Oh.
that kind of is a particle effect to make it look cool.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it just kind of like starts falling apart. Wait for it. There's always got to be an explosion.
Hey, my big question here is, did they just literally translate the Japanese names for these things?
I think for most of them, yeah.
Next is that's like
Yeah,
doesn't feel right to mouth.
Yeah, this is the first time they've ever called it a Next. Usually it's called Armor Cores. And then when you beat a mission, you have... Oh, hang on, slow down. No, I can't find it.
That was a very anticlimactic explosion.
That was
This game is...
how old is it?
I guessed it the other day. Did I say 2008? Were you there? I want to say 2008, because I'm pretty sure... Yeah, I'm pretty sure 2008. I have one... That was kind of a slow-based combat. I kind of want to show a faster base combat. Yeah, that works. In this mission, you team up with White Glint, and then Collard sends out Starva and Fragile to fight you. I don't like the way Fragile looks.
I wouldn't want to be driving Fragile.
Huh?
I wouldn't want to be driving Fragile.
Yeah, that-
Fragile
that-
is a lot like it sounds. It's an extremely lightweight class, but it's very high mobility.
Some of these names they got their strengths.
Yeah, like nimble instead of fragile.
Yeah.
Oh, obviously Next is an acronym.
They've never said it.
Oh, it was just all in
Yeah.
caps.
They never. I agree. I do think it's an acronym, but they never say what it stands for.
Did you ever look in the instruction manual?
It looks like instruction manuals.
Who looks at those?
There could be some obscure comic book that explains it all.
Yeah. There is a comic for Armored Core It's really short, but it's about the end of the first generation. So it really has nothing to do with this.
So the generations don't refer to gameplay. They're like
They're
stories.
essentially each generation is a different universe,
Okay.
I believe. Because in the first generation you're on Mars, and this one you haven't even escaped Earth because the corporations. I didn't even explain it, did I? Thought I put it in there. The corporations essentially put up the minefield to allow other corporations to explore into the space. Essentially, the whole thing's about their own greed and corruption, and they need full power. So in return, they've just basically destroyed the world and kept people from exploring into the universe and colonizing more planets. And that is Assault Armor.
Awesome.
And one last slide for my own personal thing here. And is some stories, some parts of the story, and it is screwing with me right now. Some parts of the story have really interesting quotes I like. For some reason, they just kind of give me that, hey, that's pretty cool feeling. And these are a few of them. Like near the end, when Wendy basically calls Thermidor out on he's at Starva, after he kills him, she says, "Humanity, I don't see humanity anywhere at Starva." These are just some of my favorite ones. Like when you first fired out Starva, those slimy politicians will empty calls to arms in the name of liberty. That's just some things I like personally. And that's all.
I'm still reading. So, while looking at this and thinking back on your playing of this game and thinking about it from the point of view of a game designer, do you think there's anything you've learned along the way? Like, are there things you would do if you were making a game like this?
Yeah. In level design concept, because of how fast-paced it is, it's extremely hard to actually have a very diversified level. Most of them are very wide open, and you have the targets placed in certain strategic areas. A couple of the missions, you have to go through a canyon. And there's a couple underground missions, but if you play like I play, which is usually, it's reverse joint, so you can jump, dash, 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 jump, dash, dash. It's really hard to play in an underground chamber because you're really confined, and basically you can just do a dash and slam up against the wall. There's not a lot you can do, but yeah, I feel like there's a few things I've learned from this.
You said earlier that like you played like a Gundam game and it wasn't.
The one I played was Dynasty Warriors.
Well,
So you tell me if that was a bad option. Apparently to him it is.
Yeah, that's not a mech game.
Yeah, it was like hey, there's a bunch of people. So I probably should give it another chance. Not Dynasty Warriors, but Gundam. I like the anime a lot, so I personally feel like I should give it another chance. But the whole feel of Gundam versus Armored Core is I feel like there's a possibility of Armored Cores being real, as in Gundams feel really sci-fi to me. Because essentially it's their way they move. Yeah.
What things do you think could be added new to the genre, and what things do you think shouldn't change?
Well, things that shouldn't change, I'll take an example, Armored Core 5, which they essentially take out the aerial mobility and replace it with building jumping, which I'm not a fan of. Basically, you jump up buildings instead of actually can fly. So the mobility has been extremely reduced, which my favorite thing about Armored Core 4 was the high mobility compared to Armored Core 1 through 3. And what was the other part? Things
Things that should be added.
Things that should be added. Took a second to remember. The missions in 4 compared to 1 through 3 are extremely short. I feel like they could have essentially, maybe it's due to consoles not being able to process it, maybe, but the levels could have been longer. I feel like essentially it was some of the missions you dive in, kill the target, mission over in like 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there could have been some things added on. Like there's one mission where you essentially the targets are right above you. You don't know it, but after playing it a few times, all you do is fly out, fly straight up, shoot the targets, you're done. Which I feel like essentially they have a whole other map going that way instead of up. If they would have simply just took those and put them on the other side of the map, they could have added 10 more seconds there. So some stuff like that could have helped them a lot.
You said with Armored Core 5, they got rid of some of the mobility, the aerial mobility, because you can only climb up buildings instead of being able to fly anywhere. Do you think they did that? Do you think that there's a reason for that?
If there is a reason, one of the big things about Armored Core 5 is online play, compared to this as more single player. For them doing the wall jumping thing specifically, I think they're just trying a new gimmick, a new play style, essentially. I feel like they should have done this version longer because they did the first version lasted for probably at least 10 years, while this one lasted for 3-ish. Yes.
Off of Bob's question, do you feel like the reduction in mobility, like you're not as free to move as you were in Armored Core 5 as you are in 4? Do you feel like that hurts the gameplay, or if it makes it more focused?
Because they lowered the mobility, it also allowed to seemingly longer levels, which would also levels in Armored Core 5 are a lot more difficult of sorts because you got a lot more room to cover. There's a lot more targets, and part of that reasoning is because it's online 4-player focused over this is single-player focused. So it's really hard to beat 5 without a buddy, and this one is basically just kind of run through it really fast, going really, really fast.
Yeah.
But did I answer the question? What was the question? Did I? Okay. I kind of lost myself there for a second. But yeah, the difference between that is essentially like level size and versus mobility. Like the levels seem bigger, but if you throw one of these mechs in that game, I don't think it would be. Yeah. Yes.
So you mentioned like the fate mission where like you have a choice there. Did I understand that? You have a choice whether you do this mission to kill these people or not?
Yeah, essentially, partway through the game, you have one choice of an option, which is destroy or protect artillery cabals, which is the Claard and Orca split off. And if you go with the Orca, 2 missions in, and you get another mission from Maximilian to go protect the satellite canyons, and you get a mission from the Old King. You get to pick one of them. If you go with the Old King, he wants you to destroy the couple of the cradles in the air. So essentially, you get the option to choose just kill hundreds of millions of people or protect satellite cannons.
Is that like common in the series where there's like a big decision?
There's only really there are decisions, but there's only like 3 really for the 3 endings.
When do you make those?
Like one is when you either defeat or either protect or defeat artillery cabals, and then the other one is you either defeat or protect artillery cabals is the main 2 missions, and then the third side mission is when the Old King comes to you and says, "Hey, you want to spill some blood?" Basically, he says you can't have a rebellion without bloodshed, and he wants to kill. Basically, yeah, we'll destroy all the cradles.
Do you like that decision? I mean, do you think it adds up replayability, or does it really add anything to the story?
Basically, all it really does is tell you you're a monster. It really doesn't change a whole lot, because basically neither one of the stories happen. And you basically kill every civilian floating in the cradles. So you basically are the destruction of mankind. So it's either keep people in the air, bring them down gently, and the large majority of them died due to Kojima exposure. But you destroy the anti-satellite, you destroy the landmines in the air mines, and it allows humans to go back to exploring space so they can colonize other planets. Or you just kill everyone, essentially, is the third option. Yes.
So how many pages of notes did you take to make sense of this?
It did seem pretty
Mainly I
crazy.
Because
played it
this,
a lot.
This makes Metal Gear Solid seem like approachable.
I've played it a lot. I essentially beat it on my old 360. I got S rank on everything but the final mission of you get teamed up by 5 people. And then I beat it again on my PS3. And then I beat it again on Colt's Xbox. So I've essentially beat it, including hard mode, nearly 10 times. So it's basically ingrained in my brain.
So it makes sense to you. The
Yeah,
story.
it makes sense to me.
Do you feel like the story is central to, like, do you think the story matters to someone who's coming into it? Or do you feel like the gameplay speaks for itself and the story is just
The main story, like of what's going on in the outer, like what's going on with corporations, is explained in mild cutscenes.
Mhm.
But like the descriptive, oh, Maximilian is really at Starva, kind of stuff is in the actual in game when what other people say to each other.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of like Dark Souls, where the story's hidden in dialogue. The secondary story about what's going on with you and the other pilots is in the dialogue, while the main story of the corporations and the plans of Orca are in cutscenes.
Did you feel like that was something that is a good idea to do?
I liked it. I liked the Easter egg, basically the Easter egg feature, which will be like, oh, that really happened? I'm going to go back and play that level again. So for me, it adds repeat value just to see the true story behind the story.
So you're saying in a sense that, like using Dark Souls, like we know like we have to go ring the bells and then advance on and all that kind of stuff, right? Like the high level story is pretty easy to follow, but if you want to dig deep, there's like a huge.
And if you play the hard mode story, it even adds a few more things.
Okay.
Like instead of Windeed saying, "I don't see humanity anywhere at Starva," if you play the evil mission on hard mode, you have to fight at Starva again. And then your operator says this was your plan all along. So basically he switches sides again. So it's like, hey, look, I was that guy.
Right.
So if you play the hard mode, it tells you the story more.
Are there any other significant changes on difficulty besides?
Besides
Right.
story and essentially more things try to kill you.
Okay.
There's basically they throw in more necks, a few of them. Instead of fighting one next, you have to fight 2. Like the mission, if you pick the kill all humans option, you have to fight 5 next instead of 4 next. It's basically just they have to throw in one more next into most of the hard missions.
Anything else? Thank you.
All right.
Isn't there a new Armored Core?
Yeah, Verdict Day just came out. That's a sequel to 5.
Is it good?
I haven't played it. I'm not a big fan of 5, and
Oh,
yeah,
they've lost you.
I like 4 a lot more than 5. Mainly due to the high mobility